Well, you start making decisions with your energy field. You start making decisions not based on who you should be or what you should do, but you start making decisions based on, well, what feels more resonant in my energy body, meaning what feels more alive, what feels more exciting, what feels more passionate. It doesn't matter what decision it is, if it's a huge life decision or if it's a small decision as to what shampoo to buy at the store. There's always going to be a sensation of one being more resonant in your energy body than the other.